Stigmatization around mental health still exists. In the last several years, there's been an uptick in shared treatment experiences, specifically for those who were in treatment as an adolescent over the last 30 years. As a consultant working with young adults only, it's been unsettling to hear about the horrific experiences that some folks have described. As someone trained as a counselor, we were taught to do no harm. I lead with this for each client I work with. While recording this special parent series, over the last year, several parents have suggested I interview their young adults. The special parent series is noted as being just that. It's about the parent perspective only. I'm now branching out to launch the former participant series, extending the opportunity for former participants who feel comfortable talking about their journey, doing so on this podcast. No topic is off limits, and not all stories are positive. This series is meant to be honest, transparent, and real for each individual's experience through the treatment continuum. Please note that this special former participant series is the adult's perspective of their treatment experience during adolescence or as a young adult. This is merely one perspective of a single story, and it's important to know that names have been changed for the protection of the interviewee unless they have requested not to do so. These episodes may include details surrounding suicide, self-harm, substance abuse, including overdose, hospitalizations, psychotic episodes, and other traumatic experiences which include parts of the treatment journey. That includes working with consultants, being escorted by a transport company, wilderness therapy, and a residential treatment program. All that is to say, listener discretion is advised. Welcome to an episode with a former participant in treatment.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. This podcast was formed to collectively build a bank of stories from normal people sharing their non-linear paths. Unfortunately, social media paints a narrow picture of what success looks like, so I'm doing my best to spread the news that changing course is common and you don't have to know what you want to do the rest of your life at 18. If you're a parent worried about your young adult and whether their path is leading them to success, you're in the right place. I'm a therapeutic consultant who works with young adults to connect them with resources that'll help them get back on a better path. So if you're curious, let's chat. You can schedule a free consultation through my website, which you can find the link for in the show notes. Today, my guest is Dan Gilmer. Dan has been sober for 10 years since he was actually age 20, and he's worked in treatment most of this time. He has a champion of a wife who supports his sobriety and his work life. He has 3 beautiful children and a 4th on the way. He enjoys working out, golf, meditation, cold tubs, and practicing spirituality. Let's not wait any longer. Here's Dan. Dan, thanks for spending some of your time hopping on the podcast and chatting with me.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited. We've only connected once before, and I think this is actually the first time we've seen each other. So this is like a whole new level of I'm going into this conversation fairly blind, not knowing your story. So I'm excited to learn about it, hear it, while getting the opportunity to just like be present with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a very accurate headshot, though. So I feel like I know you very well.
I do that on purpose. Yeah.
People don't.
I appreciate that. Okay, so let's dive in. I don't know your backstory. And the only thing that I know from the brief time that we connected within the last year is that a part of your journey was going through treatment yourself. So let's give the audience a little bit of backstory. Talk to us, actually, just kind of like really take it back. Where did you grow up? Just so we have a cultural context or societal context of kind of like the region in which you were raised, and probably maybe some expectations that might have been put on you, either for academics or just life in general. And then give us the kind of spiel. What was going on that led to you ending up kind of seeking out treatment?
Yeah. Okay. I was about to say, this could be a long story before you get to talk again. But I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I grew up about a mile off of LSU's campus. And both my parents worked at LSU. Me and my 2 brothers who were both older than me all went to school on LSU's campus, K through 12 at U High. And, I have like a great upbringing. People talk about trauma and like little trauma and big trauma. And it wasn't even until I was like 7 years sober that I started to do trauma work that I admitted to having trauma. Because it seemed like I just liked the way that pills felt, basically. But, being the youngest and there being my closest brother is 5 years older than me. And then it's, my oldest brother's 6 years older than me. So they were a thing and my parents were a thing and like together they were a thing. And then I came along and I was like, I'm kind of like a late addition to this party. And I actually kind of felt like that, And so that was like one thing that inherently I felt that like separated me from my ecosystem. And then another thing was I would question everything. If my parents said, don't do that, I'd say, why? And I'd also be like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I think we could do it this way too. And it might even work better if we do it this way. And so I kind of always went against the grain, and I've always been pretty opinionated in my beliefs and like communicated that, while my brothers were just like, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No problem. And so like my parents would be like, why are you like this? Or like, why don't you just do it this way? Or why don't you do it like your brothers did it? And in my mind, that slowly but surely created this idea of, is there something wrong with me? And then my first recollection of like a, societal moment was I was probably in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And like, I didn't really get the joke. It felt like everybody got the joke and I didn't really get the joke. And so, I think those three things like are good enough examples for you to understand that like I had this theme growing up that I am different from, separate from, or something like that. And so I felt alone. And so the only thing that really took me out of feeling alone was attention. It was like I'd be the class clown and I'd get negative attention, and that would either somehow like put me above of or below the norm, but at least I wouldn't feel like way over here, not even on the chart. And then it quickly pretty much moved into like disassociating. Like I started reading a lot when I was in like 6th grade. I got a lot of attention from girls when I was young. And so that was a thing. I got a lot of attention with sports because I was pretty athletic. And I was also really young for my class, but I've been 6 foot since I was in like 8th grade. And so I had like a lot of things that would and should have made me feel like a part of and like even with the rest of, my community. But I used those things to feel better than, so that I could look down on people that I felt less than, basically. I'd overcompensate for, my feeling of loneliness. And then I tried weed in 7th grade. Me and my buddy were actually looking for like $20 to buy some weed a couple months after that at his parents' house. And then we found like 60 OxyContin. And I tried OxyContin for the first time, and I immediately felt like who I'd been pretending to be. And ever since that day, I was like, all right, that's what I want to feel like. I'm going to chase that feeling, and it doesn't matter what stands in the way of me feeling like that. Like, I'll cast that to the side for me to feel like this.
Yeah. And we know too, for somebody that's so young and impressionable and all of a sudden like latches onto some sort of addictive substance that can provide them the relief or connection that they've been seeking, whether it's conscious or unconscious or subconscious. All of that is to say, I can only see the writing on the wall where this leads. But I really want to kind of like get to that. So how quickly did this escalate? At what point did you end up going to treatment? And keep in mind too, that this podcast I mean, I want to hear your story. And like you said in the beginning, like how long we could talk for a long time, right? Like fill in your story. And I want folks to know a little bit about you. I want them to be interested in connecting with you after this. And so save some parts of the story to be able to elaborate. Yeah, exactly. Leave a little bit of mystery. But more importantly, I want to also make sure that we have time to be able to talk about how you got from this 7th grader who tried OxyContin for the first time to where you are now, which is a very different journey.
Yeah. So I talked a little bit about the sports. My identity before I tried drugs and alcohol was very much like sports focused. And that's where I got a lot of attention that made me feel whole. Once I tried OxyContin, it was pretty much like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And so there was like this battle and this weighing of scales, basically from like 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. And then it all kind of came to a head the beginning of my senior year. I was either going to go play soccer or I was going to play football in college after that year. October, my parents basically kicked me out. They're like, you can stay here, but you have to follow our rules. And I went and stayed at some friends' place on LSU campus. And because I really needed to get high, I went and broke into some cars. And I found money for drugs. And I was arrested like 3 days later. You know, the police came to my school. I was like sleeping at a friend's house, and like his little sister came home and was like, Dan, the cops were at school for you. And so I called my parents and I went and turned myself in. Anyway, you know, that's when the shoe fell. That's when it was like, okay, we're going full-time drug addict, because the scholarships, anyone wanting me to play at their school was totally gone now. I wasn't even sure if I'd be able to stay at the high school that I was at, but I was definitely sure that I wasn't going to be able to compete or play soccer that year. And so I that was a really bad year for me, but I got through it. And then I turned 18, started LSU, and went to court-ordered treatment all on the same day. And the court-ordered treatment was outpatient, and it was a Suboxone clinic. I didn't know that, but I started Suboxone, and I was prescribed 18 milligrams. And Suboxone was not very good for me at 18, 19, or 20. So that's the beginning. I still haven't really gone to like residential treatment, but like that's kind of like from 14 to 18.
But this paints a picture too of like, look, you talked about like, hey, I didn't really think I had childhood trauma. Like I grew up on a college campus with 2 parents that were working like on a college campus, you know, like coming from a healthy family dynamic that you felt outcast from, not because you weren't shown love, just because by proxy you felt like the odd man out, literally. And so now here we are, we're starting the treatment process, or the like, you know, the stop-start journey, which I hear all too common for especially that young adult age. And you know this well because you lived it, but also because these are some of the clients that you work with too, right? Like, oh my gosh, how do we help? So, okay, you're doing Suboxone, you're doing like outpatient work up to 20. What happens after that point?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really vicious cycle, pretty much 18 to 20. At 19 years old, I like start trying to come off of Suboxone. I finish all my court paperwork and realize like, oh, I'm having a child with somebody. And so I found out I was having a son at 19 or 18, somewhere around there. And I was like really excited. And I had also been taking Suboxone as prescribed for like 6 months to like finish out all my court stuff. And so I hadn't done any OxyContin or anything. And like I had a pretty clear mind. And I go to this ultrasound, I find out I'm going to be a dad. And I was really excited. I was like, I'm going to be a dad. It's a little boy on the way. And I was like, I should like celebrate. And I'm kind of dramatic and like fantastical. So I was like, I should do OxyContin one more time and like say goodbye to it. And it'll be like this, almost like a, you know, I don't know, some sort of tying up loose ends, and then I can go focus. And I didn't stop doing OxyContin for a year and a half. You know, I was kicking in the hospital when my son was born. I was fiending the day after. And I went to treatment for the first time when he was 3 months old, like residential. And, everything just kind of came to a head. And then I go to treatment and had every intention on staying sober. They told me I have a mental obsession and a physical allergy, and the only thing that could save me is a spiritual connection. And I jumped in with head first. I was like a sponge. I was like, teach me everything. And I left, and I drank the same day I left. Culturally in Louisiana, I went to a crawfish boil and someone handed me a beer, and my ex said, you're not a drug addict. I mean, you're not an alcoholic, you're a drug addict. And so I had a beer, felt bad about it. 10 hours later, I bought 10 OxyContin. And so that was the vicious cycle: hospitals, treatment centers, detoxes, insane asylums, sober livings, homeless for the next, year and a half. And then I showed up in treatment again at the same place I'd been to 3 times before, which is another story. Maybe I should have had a referral somewhere else. But I showed up to the same place I'd been before after, a couple suicide attempts, because I'd had brief glimpses of real recovery, and I continued to fail, which compounded the idea that there's something inherently wrong with me. And the 12 steps aren't going to work for me. I am wrong beyond repair. I am wronger than the other wrong people around me that were able to recover with the 12 steps. And so I show up in treatment hating myself and hating everybody around me. And luckily they kept me there long enough that everyone kind of suggested independently, without conversing with me, that I should try long-term treatment out of state.
Yeah. All I could think of as you're kind of just rattling through all of that is the expression vicious cycle is an understatement for what you went through. All right. So you think, I know you just you dropped that little nugget and I kind of reflected back a very brief summary, but what was it about being out of state that was different made this work?
So I think there's a couple things. One, I really truly believe that a young person's brain is really responsive to, pretty much anybody, but especially me at 20 years old. I went from Louisiana to Northern Arizona. And so I went with this idea of I'm going to change literally everything about myself because I hate my life. And if this doesn't work, I'll just go back to doing what I was doing or kill myself. And the world and all of my surroundings was vastly different from that past. So that was number one. Number one was my environment looked different enough that I thought I could be different in it. Number two was I was in a 6-month high accountability all men's program. We weren't allowed to talk to girls, which was a huge trigger for me and led to a lot of problems. And also was a crutch that I would lean on when I felt uncomfortable. I could just go have unhealthy, sexual relationships to fill the void inside me instead of actually doing real work. Mm-hmm. So high accountability. And then the third thing was I was just removed long enough. I think I could have gotten sober at 18. I think I could have gotten sober at 19. I just wasn't separated long enough. It was literally 7 months before I could make a true decision about my life on my own. And so having to lean on people, professionals, to make decisions for me. I tell people all the time, I didn't get sober until I followed a discharge plan. And when I followed a discharge plan to the T, and I was whatever you say as the professional will make my life better, I'll trust. That's when everything really started working. So I'd say drastic change in environment, accountability, and time in the saddle.
Yeah. I like that expression.
Yeah. There is probably 60% of the story that is spiritual and divine. And I received blessings, I saw miracles, and every bit of that was interwoven into the perfect plan for me to stay sober. But I think most of that was discovered looking backward.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that certainly is a very strong missing link in terms of areas of wellness for young adults nowadays. Is just like having zero spiritual connection in any capacity. And so I think that kind of speaks to, I'm grossly generalizing, obviously, but there is a strong correlation with the young adults nowadays where there is just little to no spiritual connection whatsoever. And I'm not even talking about religion, just like spirituality, period. Like higher self, connection to the world, as, kind of woo-woo as that sounds, we just are so disconnected. And so anyways, I'm going on a tangent. So clearly, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, generationally, like this phone,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have one of these until I was like 16.
Yeah.
And like, we're seeing changes generally with younger generations disconnection, not only to the world, as she likes to put it, woo-woo, but to each other and to society and to the people around them. It's easier to Snapchat somebody in the coffee shop than it is to walk up to them and talk to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, we can leave that soapbox if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could talk more about this later, and maybe that's a part of kind of the wrap up that we'll get to. But what I want to spend the next couple minutes on is in like highlight chapter points. How did you get from what you just described, the like 3 reasons why this time around worked for you on your recovery journey? How did you get from there to where you are now? And just fill us in on what you're doing, because I'm not even going to pretend like I know your job title, so I'm not going to butcher it. I want you to kind of fill us in.
Okay. My second step was the guy that proved to me that someone as sick as me could recover using the 12 steps. He was an attorney that was arrested with a mobile meth lab. Probably 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I was able to write a letter on his behalf, and he was able to get reinstated. But he saved my life. He put me in his sober living houses and gave me opportunity after opportunity. And he told me, all you have to do to stay sober is 2 things. You say okay, and you wake up every day and you try to help somebody. So if you ask me, will you come over after this and help me move something? Okay. And saying okay is a really good way to end up helping somebody. Mm-hmm. So my whole goal, day by day, I mean, it's been 10 years now. My goal is still to help somebody every day. And sometimes it is like, I just need to help my wife with the kids. Sometimes it is, I need to pick somebody up on Mother's Day and fly them to treatment. And so I think like that is the easiest way of answering that question. But if I were to go into some like highlights, I was 18 months sober in northern Arizona, and my son was 3. And when I went to Arizona, they wanted me to sign my rights away. And I was either going to accept a job at a treatment center to be a wilderness therapist, and they were going to pay for me to go to school, which was like dream job at 18 months sober. Because all I wanted to do was help other people in recovery because of my daily reprieve. And I get the call that says, I'd really like for you to be in your son's life, and why don't you come back? And I moved back to Louisiana, having seen a place that is Prescott, Arizona in 2015 that had a ton of treatment centers. And so I saw everything about treatment that I didn't want to be and everything about treatment that I did want to be. And at the time, I didn't want to work in treatment at all. So there's a lot of kind of divine intervention here, but I ended up opening some sober living houses in Baton Rouge when I moved back, specifically catered to helping like the young adult male who needed structure and accountability, but also, frankly, to see how badass life is in your, early 20s in recovery. That ended up with me working in treatment and doing admissions at a local treatment center. And I worked for local treatment centers until probably 2020 or 2019. And then in 2020, I was kind of fed up with it because Louisiana took the Medicaid expansion, but a lot of the people we were trying to help, didn't have opportunities to find good treatment that would be like demographic specific to them, because a lot of the treatment centers here got really big and whatever. So I ended up working out of state and becoming that person for my community that families could call if they needed a plan. And I became the person that my parents needed to talk to when I was 16, 17, 18 years old. And so that's my calling, and that's my mission. And I feel responsible to that because having worked in the industry now for 8 years, I know treatment centers all over the country. I know great therapists all over the country. I know recovery coaches, interventionists. And if I'm not going to do it here in Baton Rouge, where I grew up, then who is? And so I'm the director of clinical outreach for TNR Recovery Group's Texas programs. We have Sabino Recovery in Tucson, Arizona. We have Origins Recovery and Hannah's House on South Padre Island. And we have Cypress Lake Recovery outside of Houston. But honestly, most of the people that call me, I'm just hearing their story and helping them find the treatment that makes the most sense for them,
Yeah.
And I've lived my life, this daily reprieve of trying to help somebody every day. And God has blessed me in such a way that I have no doubt, complete faith that he'll take care of everything I need taken care of so that I can keep doing the work that I do.
I love it. And we'll make sure we have in the show notes, we'll have links to all of those programs for anybody that's listening and maybe either heard them and understood them or didn't, because sometimes I think Louisiana accent is strong enough that you're like, wait, what did you just say? I love it. But we'll make sure we have the links in the show notes, including your contact information, regardless of whether or not they're in Baton Rouge or Louisiana, period. I want folks to be able to connect with you. Like we said in the beginning, this is literally the tip of the iceberg in terms of who you are, what you do, and a brief snapshot into your story. So for a quick closeout, if there is any last piece of advice, here's a question that you would give to a young adult right now, like an 18-year-old, maybe 18-year-old Dan, similar experience, kind of like showing up on LSU's campus. What piece of advice would you give that young man right now?
Your world is a lot smaller than what is capable for you and achievable for you. And I think if you take a little bit of trust and a little bit of action, you can transform your life. And whatever it is you're going through, you can probably get through it and help other people through it too.
Dan, thank you for carving out some time to share your story. I'm looking forward to folks that are listening to this that would reach out to you and just establish a connection. It doesn't even have to be for like seeking out treatment, just like it's good to know people, right? Connect with the folks that could potentially be a resource for you in your life. So thank you again for carving out time and being a guest on the podcast.
It's been my pleasure.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.